And we are up and running. This Hangout is live, and I am speaking with a gentleman who is very devoted to A Course in Miracles, Dylan Love. And he's popping up all over Facebook, and you can find him around the internet. So, how are things down under there, Dylan?
Things are pretty great. Thanks, Chris. How are you doing today?
It's been good. It's been hot, but it's been good. So, I get out and do my running around early in the day, so I'm not out running around in the heat. But so how often do you guys actually get a snowfall there in that region where you're at? Because it's winter down there.
Yeah, well, actually, we don't actually get snowfall here unless you're on like the South Island on the mountains. So it doesn't really snow here, but as I said, it only gets to around about 25 degrees Fahrenheit at the lowest, even though it doesn't really snow. So yeah.
Very good. So that means you can get out and enjoy nature quite a bit without having to dress appropriately.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
Okay, so you're immersed in A Course in Miracles. And let's go all the way back and take a look at what your childhood was like, what you were doing when you were younger. What kind of environment did you grow up in?
Well, I've always been termed an old soul because, I came across the course at a very young age. And if we go right back to the beginning, even from like 8 or 9 years old, I was always questioning why the world was always why it was. And I was asking my parents, like, why are humans the only species that are working? I'll get the same status quo answers, just like, it's just the way it is. But I was always questioning from like the very early ages, and my parents were I to be honest, I had a very good childhood, and New Zealand here, it's a pretty relaxed and it's a pretty vibrant kind of setting to grow up in, and yeah, I was always questioning, and I had a very good upbringing. And I think I came across the course right after high school. So when I left high school at 18, the course came straight onto my lap as soon as I left high school because I wasn't ready for a job. I said, no, I'm not working. I tried working for like 1 year and I was like, no, this is not my thing. I'm not here to work. I'm here. I've always had this like feeling like there's been this bigger kind of destiny thing that I've meant to grow into. And that's when the course came into my lap at 18 years of age. So that's how I came across the course and my upbringing. I mean, I did go through the depression at a very young age as well, like 11, 12, because I felt like I didn't fit into the world. And I was like, why am I here? Like, it seems so backwards and upside down. I'm like, man, because I've always remembered the light that we've come from, and that we're in now, um, the light of the mind. Not sure what the Christ mind. Like, just coming to this world just seemed totally upside down to me. So thank God that the course actually came to me at a very young age because I was ready for it. No, I'm not here to play around this lifetime.
That's
So
great. Yeah, I
yeah.
remember. I remember in my own childhood when I was 4 and 5 and 6, I would be involved in playtime and doing things outdoors. I grew up in a very rural environment and was outdoors a lot. And every once in a while, I would have this sudden, overwhelming feeling of a longing for a place that I couldn't define, that I couldn't identify. But there was just this deep longing to go back home or to go to this place, that I knew was my true home. So I can definitely understand how at an early age you can tag in to
Mm.
that, a spiritual theme and really kind of roll with it. So, what were you interested in school? Were you a tech guy, or were you a nature guy, or an artist, or what was your You're
To be really honest, it was all set up for me. Like, you know, the classes that I took were like Socrates and Socratic questioning, which fits in with the course. You know, along with like the creative abilities. Like I was always into art and photography and using my creative abilities, but it was more just all of my classes were actually like given to me, and they were all based on, you know, course ideas of like questioning and looking at history. And I think most of my classes were computer based as well, you know, learning the computer stuff, because the only job that I've ever had uh, was IT when I initially left school, but that only lasted a year because I just had no inspiration for working for money. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, there's that longing for, you know, just that sense of homeliness. Even though we try to seek for it externally, I, at a very young age, saw that this is not the way to go, and I was very inner directed my entire life so far.
so far, yes. I'm sure you've got a long way to go.
I do, I do.
So you were introduced to a course by via what vehicle? Was it through a person or through finding
Yeah.
online, or how did it happen?
So after high school, if we fast forward to after high school now, like I wasn't really into jobs, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I need another route. And I always had this feeling like I was always going to live like Jesus lived on divine providence, but I just didn't know how it was going to happen yet. And so after this feeling, and after going through this disillusionment of, you know, what am I going to do with my life? There must be a better way of living. There's that key word, there must be a better way. And that's when the course dropped onto my lap. And I actually found it through David Hoffmeister, one of his videos online, and the title was called Not Having a Job. So I was like, yes, that's me. And so I watched his videos about not working, and once you go through the course, you'll be brought out of work and into a life of joy. And I was like, yes, this is me. So I went through and I watched his entire YouTubes, which took me about a few months, just 8 hours a day, just going through them all, because I was so just trying to like grab onto something. And that's when he initially directed me to an online free version of the course that he has on his website, which I just started reading 8 hours a day as well, because I had no job at that point. So I just started reading the initial text for 8 hours a day, which took me a few months to complete the text, and then I just moved on to the workbook and the manual for teachers over the period of a few years. So that's how I initially found it. And once I did find it, and I was actually brought into the course and just going through the ideas and the concepts, I was actually guided. At this point in time, I was going through my job as an IT person, what do you want to call it, tech person for this company, and I had this strong pull to just leave the job and go to David Hoffmeister's community in Mexico. And I had initial fears because I was like, oh my God, I've never traveled before. What am I doing? I'm think I'm crazy. So I had to go through the initial fears of what was coming up about going overseas to David Hoffmeister's community. And that was more just to open me up to the practical applications of the course, and to open me up to mighty companions there as well. So that part of my life just basically set up the entire foundations for the rest of the course ideas for me to implement once I came back 6 months after.
And how long were you with David in Mexico retreat?
I was staying there for 6 months from mid 2014 to the start of 2015. So I was there for 6 months.
Very nice. And so you had a lot of support and a lot of people to interact with who
Yeah.
were already grounded in the course. As you were moving forward with this, what was the first major illumination, I guess you could say, the first major insight that came after that recognition that you didn't have to have a 9 to 5 job?
There was a lot of disorientation, to be really honest. Like, I was so disoriented that I was in bed for like 3 days in a row, just going, "Oh my God, what the hell is going on right here?" Because no one had ever told me that I'd never needed a job to survive, you know. So there was that initial disorientation that we all seem to go through at some point in time going through this course. And after that, you know, it seemed to just get easier and easier once I started going through the process of forgiveness, looking at all the ideas that were coming up, seeing them as false, so I could return back to peace. And that was basically my method while anything came up. David has this tool called levels of mind, or Spiri, and at that point in time there wasn't a Spiri, but there was this process called levels of mind, which you can just go through the perceptions, trace it back to the emotions, the thoughts, beliefs, and then the desire of the mind for separation. And that was basically my process for anything that came up. And because I did it so frequently, I got to a point where I could just do it instantly in my mind. So spirit was in my mind, just doing it instantly for me in my mind. And if anything seemed to come up, it would just be instantly go back to the desire for separation, and I could just release it within an instant instead of going through the whole forgiveness and seeming taking like half an hour to work through it. So yeah, after applying that, you know, I seemed just to get happier and happier. For me, because I wasn't really indoctrinated with such conditioning, I feel like my whole awakening seemed to be very rapid. You know, I was only in the course for basically 4 or 5 years before everything clicked into place, and I had the experience of, you know, this is what it's all about. You know, the world's a dream, and you know, I'm actually still one with God, with pure love. And from that point, it just became very, very easy to just circumvent. I think the course is it's you know, be not afraid to circumvent the voices of the world. So being being directed from outwards to going withinwards, and you know, just seeing that I only need to listen to my intuition or the voice for spirit, and just listen to the guidance, and that'll take me through every single step that I need to take, seemingly.
Yes. And then just when you think you've defined the illusion, it goes through a metamorphosis right in front of you. So that's the
Yeah,
beauty of the way it works. Now, when you were a kid,
yeah.
did you attend church? Was church a part of your life, or any kind of specific spiritual practice, or did you just have a feeling that there was something larger out there without really having any definition of it?
From a very early age, I knew within the depths of my being that there was a God, but yet I tried going to religions and I just couldn't fit into the molds and the rules and the conditionings that, you know, it all like implies on you. And so I like, my family wasn't spiritual or religious, but you know, there were people within the family that were like Jehovah Witnesses, Christian, but I never felt really drawn to actually going within the religious route, because I knew God was never you know, vengeful or have the human conditions that humans have. I always knew that God had to be something, you know, a lot bigger than that. And when the course came into my life, it basically just retranslated everything I had been taught about religion, and just, you know, just, I never know how to describe it, but just like, you know, the truth that comes from it, and the feeling that, you know, the resonation that comes from you, just like the glee feeling, like, oh my gosh, yes, this is what I'm going for. But, you know, there was no churches or spiritual practices when I was growing up, because my immediate family was just going through the status quo life, and I tried to fit into the status quo life, but I couldn't really fit into the status quo life, even though I was trying my best at it. I just knew I couldn't fit in, and there had to be like a fork in the road where I just had to kind of veer off and go, say there must be a better way, and that's when the course came.
Very nice. Now, one of the things that the course advocates over and over again is for us to stop planning, for us to stop, creating agendas and start living in a space of allowance for inspiration and just spontaneously respond to the stimulus of the Holy Spirit. Are you feeling like you're really in that groove now where you're just getting up with each day and allowing it to unfold the way it wants to? Or do you still feel kind of driven to try and create plans and have an agenda and all that sort of thing?
For myself, it's been washed away at this point in time. But because I live solely on divine providence, it's always for me. I always just wake up and just go with the flow, kind of just go with the intuition. Just my day is more about how can I serve, how can I give, how can I extend the love, then how can I plan something, how can I get something for myself, how can I um, you know I don't really think about myself, to say it's all more about giving and extending, letting the spirit pour through me, and that everything else is given without my effort. So if we can backtrack a little bit and just talk about applying the course ideas to get to this point, if we go back a little bit, I think it was a few years ago when I decided to actually just leave the 9 to 5s for good. um, there was a very strong prompt at this point to leave my job. And so, because at this point I wasn't really ready for divine providence just yet, I was guided just to leave my job and use what I had saved within the year of that job, just to use it for myself while I was going through the process of forgiveness, and seemingly just um, going into hermitage and just praying to please show me that you're taking care of everything. Please show me that I don't need to work to have, to sustain myself. And so going through this process of forgiveness, there'll be a lot of fears coming up about needing jobs to survive, and basically the whole ego thing about that the sustenance comes from the world. But I was gently unwound from it, ever so gently, and so I wasn't just chucked into heaven, so to speak. I was guided to leave the job, and I had the savings there, which lasted me months and months. And when I got to that point when the savings were run out, I found myself at a place of readiness where I could just, without this, I didn't need another job, or I didn't need some more savings to provide for myself. I could just be solely reliant on spirit just to provide for me in every moment, provide the rent, provide the food, provide everything that I needed. And I found when I released the need to control life happened more miraculously than I could ever imagine. So, we're gently unwound from these beliefs, and we aren't really just chucked into heaven. So to answer your question, like, yeah, where, like, for myself, it was gently washed away the need to plan. And where I am at the moment, I have no plans at all. Whatever happens is whatever happens, and yeah, I'm happy with anything. So
That's marvelous. Yeah. Now, how about resources down there in New Zealand? Do you have groups that you participate with? Are you occasionally called upon to do lectures, things of that sort? What's happening in the course community down there?
well, to be really honest, because New Zealand's has a good lifestyle, there's absolutely no course community down here. I mean, there's like maybe two or three or like 5 or 6 friends that actually do the course and work through the course, but there's actually no course community, no course groups here in New Zealand. So when I came across the course, I was like, oh, maybe there is some here in New Zealand, but after looking for them and going after trying to find them, there was basically none here, which is why I was guided to David Hoffmeister's community at the very beginning. So I wasn't, in that place of not having the support.
And how about Australia? That's not that far of a jump for you. Do you have any connections there? Do you have
Yeah, so Australia has a little bit more of a course community, and a friend of mine called Colin Carter uh, came to visit me from Australia. So we've been joining for the last 6 months, from December to June or July, and we've just been working through the course concepts and expanding our mind to open up to the realizations that the course offers. So I feel like the Spirit just sends people to me, and in regards to your questions about lectures. Within the last month, I've been inspired just to extend that way through online talks and social media. So I've just had all of these ideas. I just like Spirit just wants me to extend and extend and extend, and that's been looking that's been coming through the form of digitally online through the last 6 months with social media, online talks, and so forth.
very good? And what's been the reception so far as developing these ideas and implementing these thoughts?
For myself,
Yeah, just how are people responding to your presence on Facebook, etc.?
oh yeah, yeah. So basically, I just share what's guided to share, and people. I always find the reflections I always get back are, oh, this is what I needed to hear. This is perfect timing, and so on and so forth. But mainly, my direct family may not really know what's going on, but they see me happy and joyful, and that's what they join in. I'm not really here to teach my family anything. Not really here to teach people anything. It's just the witness of joy and inspiration that people love to, and the unconditional love. That's all it's about. The unconditional love that when we start opening to the oneness, that the course points to, which was the very last realization for me, was the what the course was pointing to, the oneness, and which is the source of unconditional love, and the peace that the course talks about. That's all people want to join in. A lot of people here in New Zealand don't really know metaphysics or don't really know what I'm talking about, but they just join in the joy and the love and the inspiration, and they just see me happy, and that's what they join in. And that's what I'm here to just join with them in as well. So for different people, it's always different things.
That's very, very nice. And within the course, what is your favorite image that emerged as you started to read the course? What is your favorite concept that you really attached yourself to?
I think for me, it was the symbol of divine providence, because I always had this feeling from a very young age that I was going to live the way Jesus lived. And I mean, very practically, that's the main symbol. That's why we believe that we're bodies, basically. That's the main symbol that I attached to, because I was like, oh my gosh, I can live without a job. Oh my gosh, everything can be provided for me. Oh my gosh. So that was the main concept for me when I was going through the course, which just basically led me to the realization that, oh, divine providence is just a symbol, because it's more than just bodies being taken care of. It's actually the mind that's being taken care of, because the mind's always sustained by the love of God, because the mind is in God and God is in the mind. And the symbol of just going through that, that the bodies are taken care of, as a helpful stepping stone in order to see it's much more than just the bodies that are being taken care of, but you who are the, the Christ or the child of God is forever taken care of through grace, as awareness or the Christ mind that's one with God.
Yes, absolutely. Now, how about the process of affirmations? Did you find that using affirmations or using the workbook paradigm worked out well for you? Because I think for me, affirmations have been an extremely powerful part of the journey.
Yeah, definitely. Like, same with you. Like, the whole workbook is just so powerful. I was going through the workbook and I'll get to ideas like, I'm sustained by the love of God, and I'll just be working my way through it. And I would find my day being rearranged just to show me that the ideas were true. So I'd be going through the workbook, and for example, I'm sustained by the love of God. And that day, like, I would just, like, my whole day would just rearrange to show me that those ideas were true. So I'd go out for, I'll be guided out for a walk, and someone would offer free food. I'll be like, wow, free food, never had this before. And I'd continue on, and just a whole different variety of stuff would just come to me just to show me that I am sustained by the love of God, and that I don't really need to rely on the world for anything. So I found that the workbook is a very powerful tool that will demonstrate to you that the ideas that are shown in there are true. And we don't need to just go through the course and just willy-nilly believe them or not believe them. It's more like, we will be shown through experience that they are true.
Very true. It's always astonishing to me how rapidly answers manifest as soon as I completely release a situation or a question to the Holy Spirit, because
Yes.
it is not something where you have to wait for it. It is an immediate process that seems to be initiated as soon as you pick up the course. So, how many times have you made your way through the book itself?
I've only been through, for myself, I've only ever needed to go through the entire book once, the workbook once, and then I was guided to just lay it aside because I was so in tune by that point with the spirit.
Hmm. So you just rely on that direct communication from spirit rather than picking up the book and.
Yeah, yeah. So the book is a helpful tool, but the recognition of self can never be found in words or books or anything in the world, but it can more be used as pointers towards the recognition of self. But I think where most students get caught up in is they believe that the course concepts are the truth. And for myself as well, when I was going through the course, I was like, oh my gosh, this is truth. And I got to the end of the course and I was like, oh, these are just concepts that I have to lay aside now. And I got to the end point where I was like, oh, forgiveness is even a concept I have to lay aside, because what is there to forgive? The ego doesn't really exist when we get to the very end point. And for myself, it was a really humbling kind of experience because I couldn't really cling on to anything. I had to jump into this cluelessness of I don't know. So the course concepts kind of just gradually just lost. They served their purpose and just basically faded from their mind because they weren't really needed for me anymore. And that's when the direct communication basically came in.
Very nice. So basically, it's just finally letting go of the edge of the pool and allowing yourself to just float, to be in free fall.
Yeah, exactly. And be comfortable in that free fall and not trying to figure anything out. Because when we initially jump into this free fall, there can be like a trying to cling on to something, and because the mind's always clinged on to thoughts or emotions or perceptions, and coming into the state of the I am presence, we really have to see we can't cling to anything, because everything is always coming and going. All thoughts, all emotions, all perceptions are always coming and going. So we can't really cling on to anything. We just have to remain as the presence that's beyond and before them all, in which they all arise and as.
So, and what type of counseling then do you actually offer to people? It sounds like, you arrived at a very high plateau, and you're undoubtedly given a lot of insights. How should people approach you as far as getting, connected with your vision, with your understanding, and
Yeah.
reformatting their own lives?
So I have a lot of reflections that come to me as well that are willing to go through the same process, and I've actually recreated David's levels of mind on my website. So on my website, I've made a page called Levels of Mind, which people can go to, and I've basically written out what it all means, and there's actually a example dialogue of me and a friend going through the levels of mind to come to the point of peace. So anyone who is unsure of how to go through the process of forgiveness can actually go to my website, which is called onesilentmind.wordpress.com, and there'll be a little tab called Levels of Mind at the very end under Tools, and you can go through that page and just see how to actually reel the mind back in from perception and bring it back to the mind so we can choose again for peace.
Very nice. So, do you have any other thoughts that you would like to share, or any other inspiration that's coming through right at the moment?
Yeah, I'll just talk about one of the major impacts that the course has had on my life as an example. So because I came across a course at a very young age, from the ages of basically 12 to around about 18, I was very addicted to bodily pleasures and porn and all of that stuff. So I was really just calling out for another way to look at this. And when the course came, it really allowed me to see the dynamics of the ego that were in place, that were actually underneath the addictions, underneath the actual addiction to porn and physical pleasures, like the egoic thoughts of I can get pleasure from outside myself. And then, the course defines that as the attraction to guilt, the attraction to pain, and the attraction to death. Because when we reinforce the body, that's how we feel. We feel basically guilty because we're misidentifying with the ego. So once I got underneath all of that, I could basically just choose again anytime that those thoughts were coming up, those sexual thoughts were coming up. So I didn't really need to act on them. And in the Bible, I think Jesus says, even if you think about adultery, or even if you think about sexual actions with another woman, you've committed adultery. And the first time I saw that, I was like, what? If you think about it, man, I'm guilty for life then. So, just to see that what we do comes from what we think, and we're never actually guilty because, the thoughts that we're misidentifying with aren't even our thoughts. They're just the thoughts of the ego that are arising and that we have no choice in because, we can't really control the thoughts that are arising. So that was a major impact on my life, just to go through the initial bodily addictions and the addictions to porn, and then to have the course come across, and I was brought into the awareness of what was actually going on within the mind, and that I could choose again. And when I did choose again, I found that once I redirected my mind towards spirit, I actually lost attraction towards bodies. So you can see how invested the mind is in all these addictions and these worldly means of trying to get. And once we redirect our mind, it's just like we're brought out of all of it, and it's just like, oh man, nothing that I could ever describe.
So it's actually a process of extreme surrender.
Yeah, yeah.
All the carnal urges are definitely very compelling. They're always kind of in your face. You know, you want this, you want that. So stepping out of that slavery, really, to the physical experiences in life is a key part of stepping into full awareness of what life actually is.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I think we'll kind of wind it down. I thoroughly enjoyed having time to chat with you here. How can people find you in cyberspace?
You can basically just, I have everything on my website. So if you go to my website, onesilentmind.wordpress.com, basically everything about me is there. You have all my social media there. You have all of my realizations that I've gone through in the blog post. I'll put all of my insights and inspirations and stuff on the website. So basically everything that you need is there on the website. And that's where you can just, the one main focal point you can go to that has everything about me and everything.
Very good. Well, hopefully there will be an opportunity when you'll be traveling to America, or
Yes.
and we'll be able to actually have the opportunity to shake hands and have a discussion about the course over a cup of coffee.
Yes. I appreciate you allowing me to come on the show and express these ideas.
Yeah, you are a great person to interview because it's very lucid. Your communication is very lucid. So
I have something coming through. It's just for those that are going through the course, just know that you are unconditionally loved, no matter where you seem to be or are at on the course. Whatever rung of the ladder that you are on, just know that you are unconditionally loved and you are unconditionally supported as well. Even though the ego will throw up all of its fears and doubts and everything. So just the last message there.
just hold on to trust and
Yes, yes.
put all of your faith and trust that God is, and you are never apart from God.
The only thing that can't fail in this world.
Right. Great. Well, thanks so much, Dylan. And as soon as I get the video edited a little bit, I'll shoot you a copy of it.
Yeah,
And
you're more than welcome to post it in the group there as well that I have.
I'll put it all over the internet, so it'll be
Sweet.
out there.
Okay.
Great. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.
You too, Chris. Enjoy your night.